Go ahead.
This is Frankie, Edgar, UFC fighter. Welcome to the Trevor Airdrie Show.
Welcome everybody to episode 8 of the Trevor Airdrie Show. I am your host, Trevor Airdrie. 6,000 people watched last week. Can't thank you all enough. The show is seen every single Wednesday on MMAJam.ca. Without anything further, on to the show. The recap, sponsored by Combination Sports, your one-stop shop for MMA, boxing, gear, and apparel, located at 306 King Street West in Kitchener, Ontario. If you can't go to Kitchener, you can shop online at www.combosports.com. Alright, this past weekend was the UFC Tough Brazil 2 finale. It was headlined by Fabricio Verdum versus Antonio Nogueira, Big Nog. It was a very short fight, like I thought it was going to be. It did go to round 2, which is a lot longer than it was on paper going to go. Fabricio Verdum tapping out, verbal tap out, Nogueira at 2:41 of round 2. It was a very interesting strategy by Big Nog there. Big Nog is known for submission offense and submission defense. He's known to never give up, and it's almost like, you know, he pulled away from the armbar, which essentially it sinks the armbar in, because as soon as he pulls his arm out, it hyperextends the arm. So it was very interesting. I think that is the last time you will see Big Nog in the cage. I do believe he should be headed to retirement after this fight. You know, Fabricio Verdum does tap him out, verbal tap out. Frank Mir breaks his arm, and so on and so forth. He is in the downfall of his career, so I believe that will be the time to hang up the gloves for him. Co-main event of the night was Leonardo Santos versus William Macario in the Ultimate Fighter Brazil finale. It was at welterweight. Macario just gassed himself out after one round. He was very tired looking. He was very sluggish for a guy that's finished every single fight in the first round on the season, and then he's undefeated in pro MMA at 9-0. You know, he does lose this match, arm triangle choke, 4:43 of round 2 to Leonardo Santos. Santos will be dropping down to lightweight after this tournament, which is his natural weight class. It is kind of a thing about the Ultimate Fighter is the fighters do actually jump up or drop down to get onto the show, and then they realize that, okay, this weight class was too big for me or too small for me, so they go back to their natural weight class. But you know what? Any ticket into the bigs is a good way to get in. So it's very good to see Leonardo Santos win this. Very interesting to see what he's going to do with his career. It's kind of hard to judge on that Macario fight because, like I said, Macario was gassed out about 2 minutes into round 1, so it's going to be good to see. Before that, we had Thiago Silva versus Rafael Cavalcante. Very shocking fight here. Cavalcante was the favorite to win. He was, I think, a minus 250 in Vegas. So, you know, he was a very heavily favored guy. Not as much as like an Anderson Silva or a GSP, but nonetheless a favorite. Thiago Silva, he did defeat him by knockout, 4:29 into round 1. So good on Silva for, you know, doing the upset, probably the upset of the night. But to UFC fans, I would assume that Thiago Silva is the more recognizable fighter. Before that, Eric Silva versus Jason High. We had Eric Silva tap out High with an arm lock, 1:11 into round 1. And then I'm just going to go down the list in really quick order, like I always do. Daniel Sarifian defeated Eddie Mendez by submission, arm triangle choke, round 1, 2:20. We had Ronnie Jason Becerra. He defeated Mike Wilson by submission, triangle choke, 124 into round 1. This is a very similar thing with Brazilians with the submission game, so it's not a very shocking event that all these submissions happened. And then prelims on Facebook, we had Rafael Asuncao. He defeated Vaughn Lee. Felipe Arantes defeated Godofredo Castro. We had Ildemar Alcantara defeating Leandro Silva. Ricardo Dam over Mizuto Hirota. Caio Magalhães defeated Carlos Vamola. And starting off the night, we had Anthony Braga Neto defeating Anthony Smith. So there was the tough Brazil 2 finale results. So after the card, we had the UFC awards handed out. Bonuses, $50,000, which seems to be the par right now. Fight of the night, Thiago Silva over Rafael Cavalcante. Knockout of the night, Thiago Silva once again, so that's $100,000 for him. Hopefully there's no failed drug tests there that takes the bonuses away like we saw earlier this summer. And then submission of the night, Eric Silva. So all those guys win $50,000. Unfortunately, a couple days before the event, a fight that I was really looking forward to see, Ronnie Marquez, Derek Brunson, was canceled due to a car accident. So some unfortunate events right there. The only big news from the post-conference this week was Thiago Silva getting called out by Bigfoot Silva. There's some bad blood there regarding Silva, Thiago Silva leaving the camp and moving on. So Thiago Silva said, "Sure, I'll fight you, Bigfoot, but you're going to have to get down to 205 to do so." And Bigfoot is a big guy, and he sometimes has trouble making the 265 weight class, so I don't see that fight happening anytime soon. So, in the news this week, sponsored by Street Soldier, sweet swag at sweet prices, like this shirt right here, believe in the underdog. Go to www.strtsoldier.com and get yours today. So the big news coming out of this week is the House of Commons passed Bill S-209, which basically removes the criminal code prohibition on MMA in Canada. And I will get more into that later on in the show. And as well, the states made a big move today. Connecticut becomes the 49th state to legalize mixed martial arts, leaving New York as the only state in the dust of, unlegal MMA practice. Also this week, Donald Cerrone versus Rafael dos Anjos announced for UFC on Fox Sports 1-2 as the co-main event in Indy. And another big event this week, which shocked me, was BJ Penn he's considering a return to fighting in the UFC at lightweight, which at 34 years old, he is in the twilight of his career. I don't understand the drop really. He's about 4 or 5 fights away from a title fight. That lightweight division is stacked with guys like Benson Henderson, TJ Grant, Gray Maynard. So stacked that you had Anthony Showtime Pettis drop to get his title shot. So stacked that you have Frankie Edgar drop out of the division, Clay Guida drop out of the division. Those are recognizable fighters, and that division is so deep with talent that I don't really understand this. I don't see any big money fights at 155 for BJ Penn just because of the state of his career. You're not going to see Benson Henderson say, "Yeah, I want to fight the legend of BJ Penn," because it just doesn't make sense. Also this week, it was a really weird vibe. I was watching Spike TV yesterday for the E3 video game show, and lo and behold, Spike TV is the coverage of it. I know it wasn't planned out or anything like that, that the UFC was supposed to be there or whatnot, but they unveiled the new UFC game for Xbox One and the PlayStation 4. Dana White, Bruce Buffer, Benson Henderson, and Johnny Bones Jones were all on Spike TV last night after Dana White claimed that he would never be on Spike TV ever again, no matter what. And lo and behold, who was on Spike TV yesterday? Dana White. Also, it's a great weekend of fights. We have, UFC 161 this weekend. Friday, we have the World Series of Fighting 3, Fitch versus Berkman. So that's a very good fight to see. And as well, Bellator returns next Thursday, June 19th, with King Mo fighting Seth Petrozelli in the main event. Seth Petrozelli, for all you guys that don't know, he was on the season of The Ultimate Fighter. He was the first person to knock out Kimbo Slice in, I believe it was something like 26 seconds. And then in the co-main event, we have Babalu versus Jacob No. So it's a pretty impressive fight for the Bellator crowd, and I'm very excited. I will be covering a little bit of that next week because, those are some pretty big names. Now that Bellator is owned by Viacom, they're bringing in the bigger talent. They can start to compete a little bit with the UFC, so it'll be a very good card to watch. So now we go to outside the cage, sponsored by M&A Sports Media. Big news is coming. Go to mnasportsmedia.com for more information. Go there, support your local MMA by picking up one of these wristbands. I'm wearing it. My co-host, Bobblehead Bass Rutten, is wearing it. And it goes to a great cause. It goes to support your local athletes. So definitely go check that out. So outside the cage this week, we have 2 events coming up. First off, this is a new event that I haven't covered on the show in the past. Johnny Hendricks meet and greet at Fight Planet in Hamilton, Ontario. It's June 22nd. It goes from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Tickets are $20, so you can go online and check that out. As well, an event that I've been covering for the last few weeks, the second annual Sean Tompkins Memorial Golf Tournament. It's at Fire Rock Golf Club in Kamoka, Ontario. Proceeds benefit the Sean Tompkins Memorial Fund and the St. Leonard's Society of London. 2 great charities. Definitely check those out. Registration, you can register online, or you can register at Adrenaline Training Center in London, Ontario. Definitely go check that event out. It's going to be a great day of fun and excitement. Everybody in the MMA world was touched by Sean Tompkins. Passed away far too soon. I always go through the list. Mark Hominick, Sam Stout, Chris Hordasky, Bass Rutten, Vitor Belfort, Clay Guida. The list goes on and on and on. It'll be a great day of fun. Come out, hit the links, get some good food, enter a few draws, bid on some of the apparel and stuff like that and the giveaways that they're going to be doing. So definitely come out and check that out. So this week on Trevor's Corner, sponsored by Fear the Fighter Academy. Want to be the best, train with the best, come down to 512 Charles Street East in Kitchener, Ontario, and sign up with Chad and Kyle today. Go to www.fearthefightertrainingacademy.com for more information. So this week on Trevor's Corner, the topic of the week is Bill S-209. Bill S-209, for all of you that don't know, is an amendment in Section 83, Part 2 of the Criminal Code of Canada. The amendment clarifies the propriety of promoting mixed martial arts events through Canada. The current Section 83 of the Criminal Code had not been updated since 1934. And up to date, the UFC has thrown events here, but the provincial governments have worked around the law to allow the UFC to take place. Since 2008, the UFC has hosted 12 events in Canada. Montreal had 6, Toronto had 3, Vancouver 2, Calgary 1, and Winnipeg will soon, become the 5th to host a UFC event, which will be this weekend. So what's great about all this is it legalizes MMA in Canada, whether it's, amateur MMA and whatnot. It makes it a lot easier for us to get fights down here. So at the end of the day, it's great news for Canadian MMA fans because, hopefully it'll lower the cost on these businesses and stuff like that to get more fights down here. Not just the UFC, but Bellator's been here, and AFC is here, and MFC, and all these great organizations. So it's going to be nothing but good news for the sport. It has been passed, which was, it was a catch-22. Like, it didn't know if it was going to be passed or not, but it was passed. The UFC sent out a press release about it. It's just great for the sport in general, and that's all I really have to say about that. So, final segment of the show, the rundown, sponsored by Show No Love Clothing. Check out the awesome clothing line from Paul Bernier at www.shownolove.ca. So this weekend, UFC 161. It's a card that's been hampered by injuries, replacements. It was hampered by a visa going wrong. It was just a weird event. The main event was supposed to be Renan Barão versus Eddie Wineland. Then Barão got taken out via injury. The card was supposed to have TJ Waldberger versus Sean Pearson. Waldberger was pulled from the event, replaced by Kenny Robertson. Stipe Miocic was supposed to be fighting Soa the Hulk, and Soa the Hulk's return to the UFC. Because the main event was taken off, they took off Soa the Hulk and they put Roy Nelson to bolster the card. Isaac Vallie-Flagg was expected to fight Sam Stout. However, he was forced out with a back injury, so Stout will now fight James Krause. And then Little Nog was supposed to fight Mauricio Shogun Rua 2 weeks before the card's supposed to happen. He gets pulled out via injury. Chael Sonnen was going to jump in to fight Shogun, which will eventually happen later this summer, but he couldn't get a visa to go into Canada. So it was a crazy card. It was a really deep card at first, and now it's still pretty good. Like, it's a good card, but it's lost a lot of its luster. So this weekend, it will be headlined by Rashad Evans versus Dan Henderson. It was supposed to originally be a co-main event. I'm actually very excited for this fight. But then again, I was very excited for Dan Henderson versus Lyoto Machida, and they respected each other's power too much that they kind of danced around the cage for 15 minutes in a very boring fight. I would probably call it one of the worst fights of last year. But I am going to take Dan Henderson in this fight. I think that, that knockout power is very dangerous. I think Rashad Evans is, not on a decline, but he did lose his last fight against Little Nog. So I'm not sure. Ever since he's left the Jackson camp, he's been up and down like a teeter-totter. So I'm going to take Dan Henderson. I do think that this is going to go deep. I do not think it's going to go to the judges, though. I think Dan Henderson's going to catch him with one of those left hands, and that'll be that. Co-main event of the night, Roy Nelson versus Stipe Miocic. I actually really like Stipe Miocic, but I do not think he has a chance in this fight. I think Roy Nelson, his power and his current winning streak is just going to be too much for Stipe. And I'm going to say Roy Nelson via first-round knockout in that fight. Then we have Ryan Jimmo, Canadian boy. He had a quick knockout in Calgary, I believe it was. And he's fighting Igor Pokrajic. I'm going to say Ryan Jimmo. I'm going to say Jimmo by decision in this case. I think Pokrajic is just too smart that he's not going to get caught in an engagement. And I'm going to take Jimmo. And then we have the return of the UFC women division on this card. Very excited for this fight. Alexis Davis versus Rosie Sexton. I'm taking Davis in this fight via submission. I'm not sure which round this is going to come in because the women don't seem to gas. Like, it's very exciting fighting. And, they never seem to run out of energy. They're always, go, 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 go. And I believe Alexis Davis is going to win that one via submission. Starting out the main card, we have Pat H.D. Barry versus Sean Jordan. I'm going to take the little guy here in Pat Barry. I'm going to say probably decision. I'm going to say more likely a split decision, actually. I like both these talents here, but Pat Barry is going to be the way to go on that fight. On the preliminary card, it's on FX. It's probably going to be on FX Canada. If you have Rogers, for example, if you have Bell, for example, I know they don't get FX Canada, so it'll probably be on Sportsnet or Sportsnet 1. It's a pretty decent card. The free card is actually pretty good. It's almost on par with the pay-per-view. We have Jake Shields coming back. He's fighting Tyrone Woodley, and Woodley's one of the Strikeforce guys that came over. I'm going to say Jake Shields is going to win this by decision. Sam Stout out of London, Ontario, trained with Sean Tompkins, definitely from the golf tournament and all that stuff. He is going to be fighting James Cruz. Like I said, that's an injury replacement. I'm going to take Sam Stout via decision, and I'm going to probably say that's going to be fight of the night. Sam Stout just brings it every single time he's in the cage, and it's going to be very good. Then we have Sean Pearson versus Kenny Robertson. I went back and forth on this fight. This was probably the hardest fight I had to call this weekend. I am going to say Kenny Robertson via knockout. And then starting off the preliminary card is Edwin Figueroa versus Roland Delorme. I'm going to take Figueroa to win that fight via submission. And then the preliminary card on Facebook, I'm going to take John McGuire over Mitch Clark and Yves Jabouin over Dustin Pegg. So, like always, the Facebook fights start at 7:05 p.m. Eastern Time. The prelims on FX or Sportsnet come on at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And then the main card comes on at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. So definitely check that out. Order it on pay-per-view if you haven't done so yet. Go out, go to the bar, watch it wherever you can. Just build the sport of MMA. So that's all the time I have for today. Special thanks to my sponsors, Fear the Fighter Training Academy, Combo Sports, Street Soldier, M&A Sports Media, Show No Love, and of course MMAJam.ca. Tune in next Wednesday for episode 9. And until next time, dream it, believe it, achieve it. I'm Trevor Airdrie signing off.